Lou Bisignani, and one more whack at one of the big sagas of my life. I've had quite a few sagas. This is a theatrical saga. Started out last week, and it's still up there if you want to go and watch the first half of this. It's the very first play that Actors Circle ever did was The Crucible by Arthur Miller, and it was a good production with great, we had nice big audiences. It was very well, not because I directed it, but I'm saying it had a great cast. The thing is, we had problems with costumes, which caused me to bang my head against the wall. But you want to hear all that, you got to go back and listen to last week's. And I said at the end of that it was only part of a saga. And if you remember, just one little tiny thing, the gal that was working backstage and playing a relatively small part, but yet a speaking role, had said she could only work the first weekend. And so I was given a name of a woman I didn't know, Carol Bucklaw from Carbondale. She came down at my behest to watch opening night, to see what the blocking was, to give her a script so she could learn it, and then next weekend she would take over the role. And as Carol and I were standing there discussing, with all the excitement of costumes being tried on and so forth, the gal that said she could only do it this weekend but not next weekend, she came up to me almost in tears and said she was so sorry, but she had to leave right now. So Carol Bucklaw went on, put the costume on her, gave her a script in her hand. She did a good job. Very nice woman, by the way, from Carbondale. Acted in many other shows for us too. And that was the end of that. That was the end of that first part of the saga of the Crucible. 7 years go by. 7 years. In fact, I'm living in a different house, I think, at that point. And I get a telephone call one evening. I'm sitting, having a cup of coffee and reading something like Shakespeare or, Nietzsche, something like that. And it's Carol Bucklaw. I haven't heard from her in a little while. As I said, nice woman from Carbondale. And she said, Lou, a little theater group up here in Carbondale that I belong to, that she belongs to, we want to do a play called Harvey. And we wondered if you would be willing to direct it for us. Now, by this time, I was Lou Bisignani. When I did The Crucible, I was just Lou Bisignani. But now I'm Lou Bisignani. So, of course, the opportunity to show people that I don't know from another part of the state, let them experience me. I have a hat that I put on that holds my head together, because other than that, it would explode. I said, sure, Carol. I had already directed Harvey for the Avenue Players, and a good play, nice, funny play. So she said, well, we'd like to have auditions next Tuesday at 7 o'clock, and she gave me an address in Carbondale. I don't know Carbondale that well. I drove up there, went into the place. There was Carol. I'm going to guess there were 7 or 8 women, ranging in age from relatively young to, older than me, and one man. Now, the cast of Harvey requires, I think it's 5 men. And when I did it once before, I played a role. I played the doctor who runs the insane asylum. Nice role, but it's not the lead. And I looked and I said, well, gee whiz, you have to have 5 men, and you only have this one fellow. And he said, don't look at me. I'm the producer. I don't act. Okay, gotcha. So they said, well, we could call this young man. He's about 18, but we put gray in his hair and we give him a little fake mustache, and he plays the old men that we sometimes need in the play. And I said, ooh, let me do what I can. So I figured I'd get some of my guys from back in Scranton who are, just hanging around with no life, who would come up and do this show. So I was able to get 4 guys, and I had myself from Scranton to come up. Actually, 3 guys and myself. I needed 5. I needed a lead. And I asked Carol, I have to get a hold of, because it's up here in Carbondale, you have a man. I won't name his matter. But I see his name in the newspaper all the time. We're talking back in 1983, 84, somewhere in there, 85 maybe. I see his name in the paper all the time. He does a lot of plays. I know, he's a good actor. I said, let's see if we can get our hands on him. And I would let him read for the lead. because it's a nice part, and he's well known in this area, and it would help get an audience in, where they would recognize his name. So she promised to get a hold of him. I went back to Scranton. I got a hold of my other actors that I needed, and I was going to still play the head of the little insane asylum. And there was I made one of the women who was not old, but but maybe she was 45 or 50 years old, and she looked a little like a little lady with a little spunk in her. And I said, will you, if I give you an unlit cigar? And she said, yeah, it's okay. So I made her the taxi cab driver in the show, which is not a great big part, but it's a nice part. There was another woman, very, very dignified, taller than me, and there's a lawyer part. I said, you can be the lawyer. So we're using some of the women that were there, but there's certain roles that you have to fill with. And then there was a young gal, pretty little gal, not a teenager, but maybe 21, 22, and she was a waitress at a nearby restaurant in Carbondale. She had never acted before, but she was so pleasant, and she was a pretty girl. And so I made her the love interest of the doctor in the insane asylum. She's the pretty nurse with the doctor. So a couple of days later, I get a call. We have the man. He's going to do that. He's willing to come in and read for you. But I'm thinking in my mind, no matter what happens, he can do the lead. He can do Elwood Beat Out. And I go back up there, and the whole crews are all excited. They're here, the producers there, and all the people that I cast are there, and my guys are there, and he's there. And I shake his hand, and I really buttered him up. I said, I've never worked with you before, but I've had a lot of good reports on work. And so I'd like you, and he actually consented to just read a few lines. I was going to cast him, and so we're all standing around getting ready. So let's just start reading that first scene. And I had introduced him to all the other players, including the little waitress who had never been on stage, but who was so thrilled that I had chosen her to be in this play. And he said, let me speak to you. Can I speak to you for just a moment in private? And I said, yeah, sure, come on over. And he said, and he pointed to a woman that I had barely noticed, sitting way over on the other side of the space. We had the basement of a church or something like that we were rehearsing in. He said, that's my fiancée. So when I said that, I looked more carefully at her. I actually looked at her. It was Debbie. It was the Debbie that ran out on my play opening night of Crucible 7 years before. And he said, I'd love to do the role, but she has to be the nurse in the hospital, my fiancée. Now, she was a good-looking woman. When she used to act for us before she dropped out of my play, or after she could do it. She could be the part. But the poor little waitress had been cast already and was so thrilled and so excited. And I could see her looking at me and looking over at that woman, and she knew what was going on. So I said, this is where I have to confess that I'm a pig, and I'm a rotten bastard. But the show must go on, right? So I walked up to the little gal and I said, Katie or Kathy or whatever her name was. I don't know what her name was. I said, what's happening here is I have a situation where I really want this guy, and the only way I can have him is if his fiance plays the role that I gave to you. And she looked at me and she said, as sincerely as I could never be this sincere in real life myself, even as an actor. And she said, I understand. It's okay. So thank you so much for even thinking about me. And she's like, well, and then she runs out the door. And we begin to rehearse. We rehearse 2 weeks, a couple nights a week. I drive up to Carbondale, we rehearse. Everybody's cast, everybody's doing a nice job. And the gal, Debbie, comes over to rehearsal one night, and she says, what are the dates of the show again? And I looked at her and I said, what do you mean? What do you mean? We have programs, posters out. It's Friday and Saturday. It was only one weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I gave it, and she said, oh dear. we're having a bridal shower for me on that Saturday night, so I won't be able to do the show. And I said, oh, okay. And I went over to Carol or one of the other ladies that now I knew them all now. And I said, how do we get a hold of that little waitress? She worked at a certain, they knew where she was, and we dialed on the phone. They put her on the phone. She was at the theater and at the basement of the church in 15 minutes, puffing. She had run the whole distance. And I said, listen, kid, we've had a situation change here. You're now the nurse again. I know. And she was so thankful, and she was like, I'm so excited. Debbie, of course, sat over on the side, and she was kind of morose about the whole thing. So we started rehearsing, and so we rehearsed for the next week and a half, 2 weeks with the little girl. The little waitress is now the nurse, and everybody's doing a nice job. And Debbie would come to the rehearsals. And after about another week and a half, 2 weeks of rehearsals, Debbie comes up to me and she says, I have good news. We've moved the date of the what do you call it when you have a bridal shower? We've moved the date of the shower. I can do the show after all. And for the first time in my life, probably, I did the right thing. I said, no, you can't. No. Little Katie here is going to do the role. She's doing a nice job. Her out and then taking her back and throwing her out again. I mean, I said, I'm sorry, but this is what we're going to do. So she goes back and sits down and she watches the next couple of rehearsals. Very, very, I could tell just by looking at her every time I saw her that she was a little unhappy. But in the meantime, we're rehearsing nicely. So the Sunday before the Friday night opening, that's 5 days before we open, we're going to have a run through of the entire show on the stage where we're going to do it in St. Joseph's Hospital. They had a little theater type section there. And we had some people that had gone in and put up a set, it was a couple of doorways and a window and so forth. And I go, and everybody's there, but they're all sitting around like this. Oh my goodness. What's the problem? We have to start rehearsal in a couple minutes. Where's the lead? We can't locate him. We called him several times, doesn't answer the phone. I said, well, maybe he's on his way. No. Well, he's already a half hour late. We don't know what to do. Well, give me the phone. Call the phone. I let it ring maybe 20 times, and finally somebody picked it up. And I said, hey, is this Joe Blow, whatever the fellow's name was? He said, yes, it's me, Lou. I don't know how to tell you this, but my fiancée, Debbie, broke up with me. I'm destroyed. I can't do this role. I just can't. We open on Friday. It's Sunday. And I said, okay. And I hung up and what do we do? Cancel the show? I says, we're not canceling this goddamn show. And I'm thinking, I'm racking my brains, and somebody, I don't know who, one of the Scranton actors that I brought with me, they were friendly and so, but they had been around. One of them said, John Pivovarnik? I'm mentioning his name because he becomes the hero in this story. John, and I said, I know the name. I don't really know the guy that well. But I said, he's a good actor. He's done this and this and this. And so we look him up in the phone book, or somebody had his number, and I call him up. It's a Sunday afternoon. I'm in Carbondale. He's in Scranton. I said, John Pivovarnik, you probably haven't met. My name is Lou Bisignani. He said, I know you, Lou. I've been to see a couple of your plays and stuff over at the theater. I said, well, we have a little situation here, John. We're opening a play called Harvey on Friday night, and the lead cannot do the show. He said, where are you rehearsing? And I told him, Carbondale, yeah, on the main street, and we're in St. Joseph's Hospital. He said, I could be there in about 45 minutes or an hour. I said, God bless you, John. And I wouldn't have cared if he was 37 years old and 5 foot tall and weighed 8 pounds. I wouldn't care anymore at this point. I had a human body that I could put in a role. And John Pivovarnik walked in, and I'm not kidding you, by Friday night, he was feeding lines to the other actors. He knew his lines. He knew everybody's lines. He did a great job. There are only 2 more glitches to go at that show. How many glitches can you have? After 2 rehearsals, like the Sunday rehearsal, which was kind of, what do you call it, when you crush it down a little bit, so we didn't have the lead for the first hour or so. We still got a lot of work done. Monday night we rehearsed. Tuesday I went there to rehearse, and the whole cast again is sitting like this, you know. Somehow there had been a little fire in the stage area, and a couple of the doors and the windows were all charred up and partially burned off. And they said, "We're going to have to cancel the show." I said, "We're not canceling the goddamn show." I have a pants factory. I have fabric. Believe it or not, we hung pieces of fabric, and if there was a door, I just cut a doorway out of it. It looked lousy, but I didn't care. I'm going to do this show. So we had I'm putting quotation marks, a set made out of polyester, one of the few you've ever seen in this world. And we had a lead, and we did Friday night, and it went pretty well. Even the little ladies who had never been on stage did a decent job, you know. A line here, a line there, no sweat. Saturday night was even better. Don't forget, I'm in the show. Sunday afternoon, 2:00. Where's, I won't mention his name. He's still a nice fella. I've acted with him before. The guy who was in this play, there's a guy who works at the insane asylum. He's like not a doctor, but he's the guy that grabs you and puts you into the tub of ice when you get all excited, and you got to be controlled. It's a comic role. Where is he? Well, we don't know. We've been calling him. He's not here. But there's an audience already sitting in the seats. We don't have him. I actually, literally, I've never seen this done. I've never done it before. Opened the curtain and stepped out with my suit on, my tie and everything for my costume. I'm a doctor, and I had to talk to the audience and explain that there's been a little glitch, little snag. Not to worry. Read your program. We'll be starting shortly. Get back inside. The producer, the guy who says, "I'm the producer, I don't act," runs from the audience and comes backstage where the whole cast is right behind the curtain there. He says, Lou, what's going on? What's going on? I said, "Get the costume." Very similar to the Carol night of the opening night for Crucible. Get the costume. We didn't strip him naked. We just took his coat off and put this. He had a white suit that he had to wear, like to be a guy who works in a hospital. Put the suit on. He said, "But I don't act." And he kept saying, "I don't act. I don't act." I said, don't worry, you'll be fine. Here's a script. Here, take this script. See this script? I stood next to him. For every time he had to go on stage, like through a door, I would be there with him, and I would whisper to him so the audience couldn't hear. I'd say, "Okay, in a minute we're going to knock on the door. You're going to knock on the door. A woman is on the stage. She's going to say, 'Come in.' You go in. She's going to say, 'Sit down,' but you don't sit down. Read your lines from the book. Do the best you can with, and then you're going to exit on the door on the other side." And he did 7 entrances like that. And he didn't, I've seen worse. And so we got through the show. By the way, the guy who didn't show up thought it was an evening performance instead of an afternoon performance. So I tried to get a T-shirt made for the whole cast that says, "We survived Harvey in Carbondale," but it turned out to be like $15 a shirt, so I said, "The hell with that." And so that's really the end of the saga, the Debbie saga that starts with the Crucible and ends up 7 years later in Carbondale. If you don't believe it, there's not one word of lie or exaggeration. I've even left some of the stuff out. But typical 7-year period in my life. That's it.